Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to really dive deep into something I know you're all interested in, rewiring your brain for success.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at some really cool insights from this interview with John Assaraf,
Right.
who's a serial entrepreneur and brain expert.
It's amazing how Assaraf's own life story really shows this growth mindset stuff in action.
Right.
He didn't exactly have an easy start.
Yeah, he talks about kind of being a little bit of a troublemaker as a teenager, even having run-ins with the law.
Wow.
And felt lost, convinced he'd never amount to anything.
Right.
But then he meets this mentor, Alan Brown.
Right.
And it totally changes his perspective.
It's wild how just one person can have such a huge impact, right?
Yeah.
Alan Brown saw potential where everybody else just saw problems. He became this guide for Assaraf, offering not just advice, but a practical roadmap for success.
And this roadmap wasn't about some mystical secret or anything. It was surprisingly hands-on.
Really?
Alan had Assaraf write down all his goals.
Okay.
Financial, everything.
Wow.
And then told him to interact with those written goals every single day.
Every day.
Every single day.
Interesting.
And it sounds so simple.
Right?
Yeah, it does.
But that daily practice of reading, touching, visualizing, and really feeling those goals,
right,
that's where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah.
Assaraf was essentially rewiring his brain, creating these new neural pathways through these consistent actions.
That's incredible.
Think about it. How many times have we set goals and then just kind of let them fade into the background?
Oh, yeah.
What if we're missing out on a powerful tool
Right.
by not physically engaging with our goals like he did?
That's a good point.
It's we're telling our brains, this is important.
It is important. And he's right by repeatedly focusing on these goals this way.
Assaraf was priming his brain to seek out opportunities and take action towards achieving them.
Yeah.
He wasn't just passively hoping for success.
Right.
He was actively training his brain for it.
Yeah.
And the results kind of speak for themselves. In that first year alone,
Oh, yeah.
Assaraf claims he made more money than his dad ever had.
Okay. That's a pretty convincing testimonial.
Right.
So there's this element of visualization.
Right.
But Assaraf also talks about the law of GOYA.
GOYA.
Now, you might be thinking of The Secret and the law of attraction.
Right.
Which Assaraf was actually featured in. But GOYA stands for get off your ass.
Okay. So he's taking a much more proactive stance.
Yeah.
It's not just about wishing or visualizing.
Right.
It's about taking concrete action.
Yep.
You have to put in the work.
So it's like this 1-2 punch. Rewire your brain with visualization and then back it up with focused effort.
Yeah, I like that.
But where do our beliefs fit into all this? Assaraf has this really interesting take on beliefs. Oh, yeah. Describing them as these interconnected groups of brain cells that get reinforced over time.
So he's not just talking about positive beliefs then.
No.
He's emphasizing that we all have disempowering beliefs too.
Yes. Those pesky, I'm not good enough or I'll never be able to afford that thoughts.
Oh, I know those well.
That can hold us back.
Yeah, yeah.
So those negative thoughts are literally bad wiring in our brains.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
That actually makes me feel a bit better because if it's just wiring,
right,
then maybe it can be rewired right.
Exactly. And that's where all of Assaraf's strategies come in.
Okay.
He argues that by understanding this neurological basis of beliefs, we can consciously choose to cultivate empowering beliefs.
Right.
And weaken those disempowering ones.
So it's we're taking control of the electrician in our brain.
I love that.
Okay, so how do we actually rewire those beliefs? Assaraf talks about something called emotionalizing your goals, and he dives into the neurochemistry behind it.
Interesting.
He explains how positive emotions like the excitement of achieving a goal trigger the release of dopamine.
Dopamine is the brain's reward chemical, right? It makes us feel good and motivates us to seek out more of that good feeling.
Exactly. So by linking our goals to these positive emotions, we're essentially hacking our brain's reward system.
Oh, wow.
To drive us towards those goals.
It's like training your brain to crave success.
It is. This is making me think about those times when I've been super excited about a project and I get so much more done.
For sure.
But what about when fear gets in the way?
Right.
It's hard to feel all those positive things when your brain is screaming, what if you fail?
Assaraf has these techniques that he calls exercises, mental exercises to help us manage that fear. The first one is called Take 6.
Okay.
And it's incredibly simple.
What is it?
Just take 6 deep breaths.
It's just breathing. That's it.
It sounds almost too easy, but it works.
Okay.
Taking those deep breaths consciously,
Yeah.
it slows down your heart rate,
Mm-hmm.
signals to your nervous system that everything is okay,
Okay.
and it allows you to calm down and think more clearly.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your panic.
Yeah.
6 breaths. Got it. What's the second exercise?
It's called AYA, which stands for Awareness, Intention, Action.
Okay.
First, become aware of what's happening, your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations.
Okay.
Then identify your intention. What do you truly want in this situation?
Right.
Finally, take a small action step towards that intention.
So it's about breaking down that big, scary goal into smaller, manageable steps.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be less intimidating for our brains to process.
It is. It's about taking back control and moving forward intentionally, even when you're feeling that fear.
I like that.
And this focus on intentional action brings us to another interesting aspect of Asaraf's approach, his deliberate use of language.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that.
Right.
He uses phrases like releasing weight instead of losing weight.
Yes.
It sounded a little strange at first, but I
Yeah.
can see how it shifts the perspective.
Absolutely. Losing something implies that it was valuable and now it's gone.
Right.
But releasing something suggests letting go of something that no longer serves you.
Yeah.
It's subtle but powerful.
It's like saying, I'm choosing to let go of this. I'm not a victim of circumstance.
Exactly.
Speaking of things we might want to release,
Okay.
Asaraf talks about these set points that our brains have. Can you explain what he means by that?
Yeah, so he's talking about these preset levels of achievement that we unconsciously accept for ourselves
Okay.
in different areas of life.
Mhm.
Income, relationships, health, even happiness.
Wow.
It's like our brain has this internal thermostat that's set to a certain level of success, and it tries to keep us at that temperature, even if it's not where we truly want to be.
So we're talking about those like invisible ceilings that we often set for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never earn more than this, or I'm just not good at relationships.
Exactly.
It's interesting because we may not even be aware of these set points,
Right.
but they can really limit our potential.
They do.
But wait a minute, if these set points are just settings in our brains,
Yeah.
can we change them?
That's exactly what Asaraf believes.
Okay.
He argues that through understanding how our brains work,
Yeah.
we can actually reset those set points and achieve far more than we initially thought was possible.
That's amazing.
It is. But to do that, we need to address the habits that are keeping us stuck.
So how do habits fit into all of this?
Asaraf explains that habits are basically subconscious programs running in our brains.
Okay.
They're those things we do automatically without even thinking about them.
Like brushing our teeth
Yeah.
or scrolling through social media first thing in the morning.
Exactly.
Those are definitely ingrained habits.
They are, but just like any program, they can be rewritten.
Oh.
The challenge, of course, is that creating new habits takes time and effort.
Right.
You know, it can take anywhere from 66 days to a year to truly solidify a new habit.
Wow, that's a serious commitment. But if we're talking about rewiring our brains for success,
Yeah.
it makes sense that it wouldn't happen overnight.
Right.
So how do we stay motivated for that long? How do we actually go about rewriting those programs?
Well, Asaraf talks about this 3-board system as a tool for change.
You ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a fascinating visual approach that combines goal-setting motivation and problem-solving.
Okay, the 3-board system for rewiring your brain. You got to tell me more about this.
All right, so the first board is something you've probably heard of before, the classic vision board.
Yeah.
It's all about creating a visual representation of your goals and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
Like a collage of images and words that represent what you want to achieve.
Right, so you're constantly reminded of your goals, keeping them front and center in your mind.
Exactly.
What about the second board?
This one is called the accomplishment board,
Okay.
and it's dedicated to celebrating your past successes.
Huh?
Think of it as a visual reminder of all the things you've already overcome and achieved.
So it's like a confidence booster,
Yeah.
a way to combat those negative self-doubts that can creep in.
Exactly. It's easy to forget how far we've come, especially when we're facing new challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
The accomplishment board serves as a powerful visual reminder of your capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying, hey, I've done this before, I can do it again.
I love that. What a great way to stay motivated and remind yourself of your own strength. Okay, you mentioned a third board.
Yes.
This is the one I'm most curious about.
This one is a bit more unconventional.
Okay.
It's called the crap board.
The crap board. I have to admit, the name is pretty catchy. What exactly goes on this board?
It's where you confront all the obstacles that are standing in your way. Think of it as a place to externalize all those mental roadblocks. The acronym CRAP stands for conflicts, resistance, accomplishments you're procrastinating on, and procrastination itself.
So it's not just about identifying problems.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that sometimes we're our own worst enemies.
Right, exactly. It's about bringing those subconscious blocks to the surface where you can deal with them directly.
Yeah.
Asaraf believes that by getting all that crap out of your head and onto the board, you can gain clarity and start developing solutions.
It's like shining a light on those shadowy fears and doubts that we usually try to ignore. I could see how that would be incredibly empowering. So we've got the vision board for inspiration.
Right.
The accomplishment board for motivation.
Yes.
And the crap board for, well, dealing with all the crap.
That's right.
It sounds like a pretty comprehensive system. Do you have any examples of what someone might put on each board?
Sure. Let's say you're aiming to start your own business.
Right.
Your vision board might include images of a thriving workspace, a graph showing increasing profits, or maybe a quote about entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
It's all about visualizing what success looks like for you.
I like it.
On your accomplishment board, you might showcase past projects that you successfully completed, awards you've won, or positive feedback you've received, anything that reminds you of your competence and capability.
Okay.
And on the crap board, it might be those fears about financial risk, worries about leaving a stable job, or maybe those negative thoughts like, I'm not qualified enough.
Yeah.
It's about being honest with yourself about what's holding you back.
You got it. And once you have those fears and obstacles out in the open, you can start brainstorming strategies to address them.
Exactly.
It's about turning those stop signals into go signals.
Yes.
Remember how Asaraf talked about how fear doesn't always mean we should stop?
Right.
Sometimes it's just a signal that we need to adjust our approach.
Right, like that warning light on your car dashboard.
Yeah.
It doesn't always mean you have to pull over and call a tow truck.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to check the oil or add some air to the tires.
That's a great analogy. It's about becoming more proactive and less reactive when it comes to our fears and challenges. This brings us back to those set points we were talking about.
Okay.
Asaraf argues that many of our limitations are self-imposed.
Yeah.
We've unconsciously set our internal thermostat to a certain level of achievement.
Right.
And we're often afraid to crank up the heat.
I see what you mean.
It's like we've drawn these imaginary lines around ourselves, limiting what we believe is possible. It makes me wonder, how do we even identify those set points?
That is the tricky part.
Yeah.
It takes honest self-reflection.
Okay.
And a willingness to challenge our assumptions.
Yeah.
For example, you could ask yourself questions like, what limiting beliefs do I hold about money? Or, what have I convinced myself is impossible for me to achieve?
So it's about paying attention to those negative thoughts and questioning why we believe them.
Exactly.
And then using tools like visualization affirmations in these boards to start rewriting those internal scripts.
Absolutely. It's about consciously choosing to believe in a different reality.
Yeah.
One where we are capable of achieving more than we ever thought possible.
Okay, this is all really resonating with me. I'm feeling inspired. But I also admit there's a part of me that's thinking, is this just positive thinking dressed up with fancy neuroscience?
That's a great question.
Can you tell me more about how Asaraf connects these techniques to actual brain function?
That's a really good question, and one that I think a lot of people have.
Yeah.
You know, Asaraf doesn't just talk about the power of positive thinking. He dives into the science behind it.
Okay.
For example, he explains how visualization actually activates the same neural pathways in our brains as actually performing the action.
So our brains don't really know the difference between a vivid mental rehearsal and actually doing the thing.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
That's fascinating. And remember how we were talking about dopamine being the brain's reward chemical?
Yes.
Well, Asaraf explains that when we visualize ourselves achieving our goals, our brains release dopamine.
Right.
Which further reinforces those neural pathways and motivates us to take action.
It all ties together.
So we're essentially hacking our own neurochemistry to support our goals. It's like we're giving our brains a taste of success, and they want more.
Exactly. And the more we engage in those positive visualizations and affirmations, the stronger those neural pathways become, and the more likely we are to actually achieve our goals.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Even with all these tools and techniques, change isn't easy.
No.
It takes consistent effort
Yeah.
and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
Absolutely. And Asaraf himself admits that he still experiences fear and self-doubt, even after all of his success.
It's reassuring to know that even someone who's achieved so much still faces those human challenges.
Right.
It makes his approach feel much more relatable and attainable.
I think that's one of the things that makes Asaraf so compelling. He doesn't claim to have all the answers.
Right.
Or present himself as some kind of guru.
Mm-hmm.
He's simply sharing what has worked for him.
Right.
And offering practical strategies based on a deep understanding of how the brain works.
It's like he's giving us the user manual for our own minds.
That's a great way to put it.
It's empowering to realize that we're not just stuck with the programming we were born with.
Oh, God.
We can actually rewrite the code and create a better version of ourselves.
Exactly. It's about becoming the architects of our own lives.
Yeah.
And while it takes effort, the rewards are well worth it.
Right.
Think about all the things that are possible
Yeah.
if we can overcome our self-imposed limitations.
It's mind-blowing to think about the potential that we all have within us just waiting to be unlocked.
It is.
But it's easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer scope of all this.
Right.
So if we had to boil down Asaraf's approach to rewiring our brains for success,
Okay.
what are the key takeaways we should focus on?
I'd say there are 3 main points to remember. First, become aware of your thoughts, beliefs, and habits.
Okay.
Identify those limiting beliefs that might be holding you back and start challenging them.
Right. It's about becoming the observer of our own minds and recognizing those negative thought patterns that can sabotage our success.
Exactly.
But then what? How do we actually shift those beliefs?
That's where the second point comes in. Leverage the power of visualization, affirmations, and emotional engagement.
Okay.
Create a vivid mental picture of yourself achieving your goals. Repeat positive affirmations that support those goals.
Right.
And really connect with the positive emotions associated with achieving them. Remember, your brain doesn't know the difference between a powerful visualization and reality.
So we're essentially training our brains to crave success by associating it with those positive feelings.
I love that.
Okay, what's the third key takeaway?
The third point is all about action and consistency.
Okay.
Don't let fear paralyze you. Break down big goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Right.
And take consistent action even when it feels uncomfortable. Remember, Asaraf's exercises take 6 and AYA for managing fear and moving forward intentionally.
Right. 6 deep breaths to calm the nervous system.
Yes.
And then awareness intention action to keep moving forward even when those doubts creep in. So much good stuff here. But I feel like we've only scratched the surface of Asaraf's work.
There's definitely a lot more to explore.
Yeah.
But I think these key takeaways provide a great starting point for anyone who wants to start rewiring their brain for success.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something that really stood out to me in Asaraf's interview, his intentional use of language.
Yeah.
He talks about like releasing weight instead of losing weight, or creating abundance rather than making money. It seems like such a subtle thing, but I can feel how those small shifts in language can have a big impact on my mindset. What do you think?
It's not just about positive thinking, you know?
Right.
It's about aligning your language with the reality that you want to create. Asaraf believes that words have power.
Yeah.
They can shape our thoughts and influence our actions.
So by consciously choosing words that empower us and support our goals, we're actually rewiring our brains for success on like a deeper level.
I think so.
It reminds me of that idea of neuroplasticity, how our brains are constantly changing and adapting based on our experiences and even our thoughts.
Absolutely. Our brains are incredibly malleable. It's like learning a new language.
Right.
The more we use those empowering words and phrases, the more fluent we become in the language of success.
It's almost like we're reprogramming our internal operating system to run on success software.
I like that.
That's such a powerful concept. We've covered so much ground today. If you had to choose one key takeaway, the most important thing you hope listeners will remember from this deep dive, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. You are not limited by your circumstances, your past, or even your genetics.
Yeah.
You have far more power to shape your own reality than you may realize.
Yeah.
By understanding how your brain works, you can unlock that power and achieve incredible things.
It all comes back to that idea that our brains are like supercomputers. And if we learn how to code them for success, there's really no limit to what we can achieve. This has been such an insightful conversation, and I'm already feeling inspired to put some of these techniques into practice. What about you, listener? What resonated most with you from today's deep dive? Which of SRS techniques are you most curious to try out? We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll leave you with this final question. If your brain truly is a programmable supercomputer, what incredible things could you achieve if you learned to code it for success? It seems like such a subtle thing, but I can feel how those small shifts in language can have big impact on my mindset. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not just about positive thinking.
Right.
It's about aligning your language with the reality that you want to create. Asaraf believes that words have power.
Yeah.
They can shape our thoughts and influence our actions.
So by consciously choosing words that empower us and support our goals, we're actually rewiring our brains for success on like a deeper level.
I think so, yeah.
It reminds me of that idea of neuroplasticity.
Remember how our brains are constantly changing and adapting,
right?
Based on our experiences and even our thoughts.
Absolutely. Our brains are incredibly malleable.
Yeah.
It's like learning a new language.
Right.
The more we use those empowering words and phrases, the more fluent we become in the language of success. It's almost like we're reprogramming our internal operating system to run on success software.
I like that.
That's such a powerful concept. We've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
If you had to choose one key takeaway,
Okay.
most important thing you hope listeners will remember from this deep dive, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. You are not limited by your circumstances, your past, or even your genetics.
Yeah.
You have far more power to shape your own reality than you may realize.
Yeah.
By understanding how your brain works, you can unlock that power and achieve incredible things.
It all comes back to that idea that our brains are like supercomputers.
They are. And if we learn how to code them for success, there's really no limit to what we can achieve. This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. And yet I'm already feeling inspired to put some of these techniques into practice. What about you, listener? What resonated most with you from today's deep dive? Which of SRF techniques are you most curious to try out? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final question to ponder. If your brain truly is a programmable supercomputer, what incredible things could you achieve if you learned to code it for success? Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.